Hello, dear hearts, and welcome. This week I have a very wonderful and colourful guest. He is Patrick Gamble, and he is an artist and a visionary, and he's also a bridge because he assists people to access their own inner vision, to be able to bring through their own inner creations to share with the world. And so thank you so much, Patrick, for joining me today. I really look forward to hearing about your experiences and hearing more about your visions and your work.
Well, thank you very much for asking me to come on. We're really looking forward to it.
And me. Tell me a little bit about, because you live in a really wonderful part of the world. You live in Cornwall, so you have a little bit of everything. And I've always felt that Cornwall has this very unique frequency. There's something very ancient about the land, and there's something, the light is different. There's lots of really interesting frequencies and feelings around that area. So I'm not surprised that you're there and based there.
Yeah, it kind of, my father was Cornish and my mum was born across the river into Devon, the next county. But the river is a big divide between Cornwall and Devon, or England. And so, yeah, I kind of spent my early childhood living in Tavistock, which is Devon until so. But after many years, obviously we returned to Cornwall. And Cornwall it's such a magical, mystical. It's full of myth and legend, and it's got, you know, the energy lines, the ley lines that run through the land, and it's drawn a lot of people there over time. So it's got this magic to it, and as you said before, the light is different. It's a very narrow piece of land with two coastlines, and one coastline is very gentle, and the other one is very rugged. So. But yeah, if you go further down into Cornwall, not that it's that big, but there is a little microclimate further down, and it's sheltered. Where I live on the edge of Bodmin Moor, and it's very, I live in a village called St. Clear, even though we get a lot of mist and rain because for Cornwall, we are very high. And, but yes, it's drawn a lot of people, the druids and pagans and all sorts of all walks of life to Cornwall because of the energy that it holds. Yeah.
Wow. I know I'm going to take you back now to your earlier childhood, because you've done a lot of traveling when you were younger. You lived in Australia for a little while, and then you moved to Africa, to Zimbabwe as well, before you came to the UK. So with high insight, I'm imagining that those experiences in those countries, and again, that light that you were exposed to, which is going to be different again, has definitely immersed itself in you and in your work later. How did those experiences enrich you when you look back now?
I think I was quite young because I'm one of 6 children. I have 2 more brothers and 3 sisters, and my dad had this desire to travel, but it took a while for us to actually leave England and to go. But we set off. I was actually 11 years old when I left England to go to Australia. And we actually, when we got there, we actually ended up living sheep stations, cattle stations. Basically, it was outback. And it was very, the experiences that we had living there and being very much in touch with the land, because of its wildness and its wonderful nature, and its the variation of all of it. It's an amazing country, and it's such a young country in a way of discovery, and so vast as well. So this vastness and the amount of the animals and just the land. And my dad was very much into, I'm not going to say crystals, but he was very much into gems and stones, and he ended up collecting stones. We mined for gold, and So we used to go out after the rains, because to see what the rains would uncover, and they would uncover these beautiful agates, and we would go and look for them. And of course, you know, the wildlife were the dangerous snakes and spiders. And so yes, we were really chucked in amongst that, and really remote places. And for quite a long time, there was a harshness to living, but it was a very natural way of living as well. I ended up going into a school where there were only 13 children, and there were 6 of us as one family, and this bush school. But my education was not good. I did not do, when I was, I can't remember exactly, when I was probably 6 or 7, I'm guessing, I was put, because I know I couldn't read or write. And I used to just write loads of, I don't know why, I just used to join letters up. It never said anything. And I used to always think that someone would question me, because you couldn't read my writing. I knew at such a young age, I couldn't join up words. And so it didn't go away, but I learned many, many years later that I have dyslexia, but I didn't know what I was. Back then, no one never knew what, I just thought I was, well, in my words, dopey. I just thought I just couldn't. So schooling for me was such a very challenging one. And so into the schools. So we experienced we traveled a lot within the country from one job to another. And then we eventually ended up in Western Australia. My dad got a job in the mines. But again, schooling for myself, it was still bush. It was still very much remote. But the wonderful thing, we experienced the treasures of the land, and that rawness and that discovery, and the Aborigines, and we were really in amongst that. And even when we went to South Africa, my dad went out there on a contract, but he actually fell out of his contract, and we just went bush, and it was all remote, and our way of living was very, gosh, it was nomadic in a way. We just traveled and lived off the land. So it was very hard on my dear mum, my with 6 children, and the way of life. But some of the experiences were very, very challenging and very, very difficult, and a lot of hardship as well, from not having no money to no food to, yes, we were really, my brothers didn't wear shoes for many, many years. Bearing in mind, we lived in a country where it was quite acceptable and not to be that way. And but it was a very, very challenging and difficult, but beautiful at times. And coming into my adulthood, I didn't value those experiences until I become a lot older. And then the values really came into play and played a great part in the making of me, if you like.
Yes. And I find your images really profound in many ways. You create these beautiful sort of haunting images that speak directly to soul. So although you may have felt during your childhood that you were maybe not able to communicate in one form, there's obviously another deeper level of communication that you've brought through, and you are assisting other people through your images to communicate with themselves on a much deeper level, which is a huge, huge gift. And these images, I love the variety of the realms that you take us into. So you have the magical realms, the mystical unicorn, and these elder frequencies, these ancient Native American images, very powerful, very wise. And also I love the ocean realms that you take us into as well. And you have one really striking image on your website, which has these 2 whales and this mermaid in the middle. So it's assisting people to start to play with something that they can remember from inside, because you are speaking a language that doesn't need any words, because we can feel it. And tell us a little bit more. I know that you've had you had an experience, an awakening, and how that changed things for you, because that happened quite early on when you came back to the UK.
Yeah. I mean, I basically, but my mum always had a faith. I'm not sure about my dad, but my mum always had a faith. And unfortunately, through life and challenges, I lost that piece of faith that my mum gave me. So I become a non-believer in my younger days. And up until the mid of my middle age, I was if someone said to me, you know, I was an atheist. I kind of went under the title as an atheist and a non-believer, and I really did feel it's a very safe place to be, because if you don't believe in something, there is no expectation, so you cannot be let down by no more in life. So because of the challenges that we all experience, they can, you know, they have an effect. And it's the cause of effect, which is something that I teach in a positive way now, not a negative way. Because the cause of effect can have a negative effect, and then we get involved in the negative, which can feed and create the more. But I've come to learn that we can turn that around, and you know, the cause of effect, if we aim to hold on to the positives, we create the positives within our life. And but I was this non-believer, but I was okay. I reached a time where I was very happy in my life. I reached a time where things were, for one time in my life, things were kind of falling into place. But that's when spirit came into my life. They didn't come into my life when my life was challenging. If they were there, I didn't know. I have no childhood experiences. I have no knowledge of anything spiritual or anyone around me helping me within the challenges of my life prior. But my life became very blissful. And people say to me, well, you know, how did it happen? And I think sometimes they expect that I was in a very difficult place, but I wasn't. And it happened through, because I'm a builder. I've been a builder for 40 odd years, and it's kind of in a way where I was on a job working, a place working, and a builder was moving, because a lot of people come to Cornwall, and because of its energies, it doesn't always work for everyone there. It's a beautiful place, but it doesn't always work. And some people are they love the buzz of the cities and the larger places, where Cornwall is very quiet, so they don't stay there, and they move on. But he brought a box of bits and pieces for his mate, which wasn't me, and unfortunately his mate left it on site, but it ended up coming my way. And, you know, I guess it was meant for me in its journey, but I took it home and just put it in the garage. And months went by, and one day I came to this box because I was tidying up my garage, and I emptied it out, and there were 3 tubes of paint, oil paints in that box. And I picked it up and I read oil paints, and I squeezed the tube, and a thought came into my head, just a thought from nowhere, a thought to do a silly picture and just stick it on the wall as a childish thought. It was a childish thought. And I thought, right, well, I left the garage and I got some brushes, and I thought, I'm going to dabble with this. And I actually ended up painting a man's face. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know who it was. And I had no connection to this man's face. And my ex-wife now, but my wife at the time, came home, and I said, I've painted a picture. And she said, you painted that? And I said, yes. She said, well, who? Why? Who? I said, I don't know. And nothing else was really known, but that was the trigger. You know, whether it's we hear a term of doorkeepers, you know, whether that was my door opener. It opened the door, and not immediately, not like it slowly trickled. And this was over many months, and I started to see or sense. I would be woken from my sleep to an energy ball floating around the house, big orange ball. And I walked up to it and I actually put my hand in it, and it just disappeared. and I would be walking to almost like a hummingbird, beautiful, beautiful colored bird flying around my bedroom. And you're lying in bed thinking, what? Your brain's trying to, you'd be walking from your sleep. I would dream of painting, and to the extent where I would wake still in that place of I'm painting a picture, but actually I had to go to work as a builder. And it got so strong, and eventually my ex-wife said, you should go and buy some more paint. I said, I don't know what to buy. She said, well, it was oil paints, buy oil paints. So the only thing I knew is I wanted a big canvas. That was the only thing I didn't want a small, I wanted a big canvas. But I took it all on. I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't have no knowledge. And nothing happened. The days went by, the nights went by, the weeks and the months. But one night I was walking from my sleep and I came down and I painted. And I actually ended up painting about 30 paintings, one after. I went to work very little. I still had to pay my bills, so I had to be careful of how I can manage what is happening. And but I didn't understand it. I really didn't understand. And I don't know that I needed it. Because I guess I had some issues with religion and faith in God and what the world was going through. How can there be a God when all this is happening in the world? And I had some internal issues here with and also with spirit. I didn't have no knowledge. I didn't know how. I didn't know that I needed it. Because my life was in a good place. And then my thoughts were, why is this coming to me now when my life is really beautiful? Why hasn't it come to me in my past challenges when my life was hell? Why didn't it happen then when my life was, it's all these things. And I ended up going to a spiritualist church. I didn't do churches. I mean, they weren't, religion, but I ended up going to a spiritualist church. My brother started going with a girl whose mum was a spiritualist. And he said, listen, maybe you should go along. And I thought, I don't know. I don't really want to go. And, but I did go. And I sat right at the back and I got a message from my grandfather, very short message. And basically part of the message was, he is surprised seeing me in a spiritualist church is what I am being there. And it was so true, that one line really, because I was very nervous being in that spiritualist church. Because I guess because of some unnecessary fear of the unknown, and I just didn't know, and I wasn't sure of. It just felt crazy, everything that was happening. But that's how it started. I stopped going to that spiritualist church and I went to another one, the next town, and there they were very, very lovely, lovely people, and they wanted to give me healing, and I felt I was being pulled in. But I didn't know that I wanted it. And but I was painting and I didn't really the paintings, some of the paintings, they touched me in many different ways. That's part of the message in a way. And but the months went by and that second church rang me on I had not been to see them for a long time. And that second church rang me on a Sunday and said, we have a gentleman from Somerset, which is further up in England, and he is down serving this church. He is a medium and a healer. Can we bring him to see your paintings? And I really connected to him. He was so down to earth, just a normal guy. And he became my teacher, my mentor. And even though I didn't rush into it, I went very slowly, but he became my mentor, my teacher, my best friend. And I thank him for giving me the foundation to be able to take control of what was happening and to develop what was happening. So yeah, that's how I came into it. And, the paintings, I paint in two ways. I paint the vision work and I also paint the psychic work. So but everything is with image is a huge thing for the mind. And apparently we take 80% of knowledge in through our sight. So it's apparently so it's massive. And I know for myself, and my mum was a wonderful lady. And if you bought my mum a card, she would value the words that were inside of it. The words were everything to my mum. I'm not the same. I don't mind if the card is blank, the image, the picture. I've come to learn it's the picture that I would, and then the words are, well, let's see what's. So there are we're all a combination, but there are word people and there are picture people.
Yes, and it's all towards the same thing, because it's it's the feeling.
It's the feeling. So that's how it kind of evolved, and that's where it started. Bearing in mind, I was a builder, I had a family. I eventually went through a very challenging time again, and my life just turned upside down. I was asked to go to Canada with my work through Bill, my mentor, my teacher. But when I was away, my life got turned upside down. Basically, I lost everything, my home, everything broke down and disappeared. So I rebelled then. I went back to this place I went before. I rebelled against spirit, about any belief or knowledge of the hereafter. And I was in a very difficult place for about 18 months. But then I had another encounter. A spirit guide came to visit me. And my goodness me. I will never be able to put into words that connection. Never, ever will there be words for that connection. But it turned my life around. And it was only then that I was truly ready to work for spirit. It's in the pathway and the knowledge. And even though I've been through a lot of changes and I had to kind of start again in life, I actually set out to create more change in my life. Because a lot of us, we get comfort from familiarity. You know, unless change is beautiful, we don't really want it, natural enough, because the fear of what it may create. So, but I overcome my fear of change and I let go of my past, and I really set out to make more change for myself. And it was actually the making of me. It was actually the beginning of me finding Patrick. Even though Patrick's life got turned right upside down and even broken, it was the beginning of me finding my true self. Yeah, it's just the journey that it takes to get there, and the experiences along the way. So yeah, it's all intertwined.
Absolutely.
Our pathways.
Absolutely. And you are so well known with your spirit guide portraits that you offer and your readings. When I lived in Wales, so many of my friends were always talking about you, and we would hear you. You would do lots of sort of holistic things in different places, sharing your work, speaking about your work. So how did you start to recognize, this is something that I see? Did you start to see other people's spirit guide or a vision? How did that all unfold for you to become something that you were then able to offer as a greater in-depth reading for people?
It started. There are two ways in which I work, because I could have a dream, so the power of a dream, the power of thought, because there are two thoughts. There are our worldly thoughts, but there's spiritual thoughts as well. And when we start to learn that, I can separate. But in those early days, I didn't know. But we have thoughts from spirit that can be placed into our mind, but there's also logical thoughts, or thoughts that can be triggered by conversation and all, very logical, conscious thoughts and intuitive and subconscious stuff. So there's a combination of things, but there are ways in which I'm working. But I started to see energy around people, and it got very, very strong to the point that I couldn't ignore seeing the energy around people. And then meeting Bill, and Bill's helped me to work with this, and also helped me to turn it off and turn it on, because I didn't know how to turn it off. That was part of my problem in the beginning. I got confused between the two worlds, the physical world and the spiritual world. So it wasn't really a good place for me, even though there are people that are 24/7 that are perfectly in harmony, but it didn't work for me. But I started to see energy around people. And then it kind of moved into a place of maybe its natural flow was to paint this energy around people. But I was very nervous. I guess I didn't have the trust. I didn't have the knowledge. I felt I didn't have the tools, even though, I didn't have the experience. It was very, very difficult. And so in my early days, I undertook to do a painting for someone, but there was no message. I didn't have, it would drain me. That's the other thing. I didn't know how to work with the energies. So it would drain me. And part of it was my own nervous energy draining me as well. It's part of me and how I was functioning that was draining me, but I was drained. It would drain me. And I had no answers to any of it. So people would come for a painting and we give them a painting and I just wanted them to go because I was exhausted. And but then it's like any development. Then I could paint 2. And I ended up painting 3 and 4. So it's development. And then people asked for cards of my work because the image was there. And I didn't sell my work in the beginning. I gave some away to charities and I gave some away to people. But generally speaking, I needed them around me to learn from my paintings. I still needed them to learn. And but people said, do you have any cards or gift cards? And I said, so I ended up having 8 postcards printed of 8 different images. And then I saved up more money. And then I had another 8 postcards. So I had 16 postcards. And at one of the events I went to, a medium came up to me. She said, Patrick, can I ask you a question? I have your 16 cards here. How do you work with them? And I said, I don't work with them. She said, what? She said, I'm using them in workshops to trigger thought, to trigger the mind, and to get people to open their minds up. I said, oh, wow, gosh. And she said, you should be working with these images. You should be doing more with them. She said, do they have a title? I said, I don't title my work then. I don't title. I said, but I have a feeling to every piece. She's telling me the feelings you have with these pictures. And she wrote it all down, each card, she wrote all of my feelings down. And she said, you have to work with these images. And that started to bring the reading in then. So I would paint, and I started using just these 16 pictures. And but I knew what they meant. I knew their meanings. And so I kind of, but I didn't know how to read the cards, if you like, or how to present the cards. And then I was given a thought on how to read them. And because that's all I could see it was as a thought. I was shown in my head. But in my early days, I thought, oh, yeah, I've had a thought. But I guess I'm going to do it this way. And I've never changed the way in which I read those cards. So I've been reading those cards now for getting on for 30 years now. So I have not changed the way from that very beginning on how I read those cards. But now I have 72 cards and thoughts of extending it now to far, far more because it's a small proportion of my paintings. So when someone comes to me, first of all, I like to see a reading as an empowering thing. I like to see it. It's labeled as psychic reading, even though, the word psychic may be not always the best word to use, but the essence of a psychic represents the soul, but it also represents thoughts and feelings, the world in which we live. It carries the word psychic is to do with feelings and thought in a very worldly way, not just spiritual way, in a very worldly way. So my readings are about life. That's what they're about. And within life as I know it can become very confusing, and direction and future can be very lost, or all these things happening in life. So my readings have always been psychic readings because I've needed my help in this world. I need my help here in the here and now. So my readings are about the here and now. So they're empowering. So we have to give some confirmation because, but they represent the past, the present, and an element of the future, because the future, my thoughts are no longer in my past. My thoughts I'm in the now, but my projection is always forwards. My projection is my tomorrow, but my energy is in the now, because I'm a product of yesterday. So it's how yesterday affects me, but however yesterday affects me, I'm holding a positive thought today. However, whatever happens in my yesterday, I have to hold a positive thought today, because that positive thought has a huge effect on my tomorrow. So with a lot of us, we carry those challenges of yesterday into today, which influences our tomorrows, and therefore life can stay in more of a struggle and all these elements. So the mind is a very complex, the power of the mind is huge, the power of the mind. And so, cosmic ordering, the power of the mind, the vision. We used to think vision was something for, the wizards and the shamans and the goddesses. And we used to think it was for but we all are capable for the vision. And the vision is a powerful thing. How we deal with our mind in creating our tomorrows. So it's very empowering. It's psychic, so it does, it talks of our challenges, our difficulties, our experiences, whether there are personal ones, because I'm dealing with me, which is one thing, but I'm also have loved ones around me and friends that are also going through challenges as well. So we want everyone to be happy. We want everyone to be, life to be flowing. And so it could be a personal challenge, or it could be what I call an indirect challenge, which is someone we're connected to. But it's also about making decisions and choices. I like to think a reading brings up confirmation of our own thoughts. So if we're thinking something, it wants to say, well, your thoughts are correct. Your free will. We all have free will in how we deal with our life, and free will is a wonderful thing. It decides whether we turn left or right. Do we go or do we stay? So free will, we all have it, but it's like tidying their mind up, because the mind is in a confusing place. And when someone has a reading, I want them to feel empowered, because it's how they project their own energy. If I project my energy like this, it's not a good place for the law of attraction. We have to project our energy, right? So we have to bring the power back into a reading to empower them in making their own decisions or their own choices, and also the element of projecting their own uniqueness to shine their own light again. So a reading is there's a lot going on within a reading, and yes, and it's based, and also our spirit guides. We can paint spirit guides, which again, but it all comes back to this world. I don't take it outside of the world, because this is where our journey is. And this is where we have to work on our future. So whether it's a guide, whether it's a power or totem animal, whether it's a family member, we bring it all back into this space here, because this is where that person lives. This is where they're dealing with their challenges. So two sorts of people come for a reading. One of them is for their spiritual development and wanting to know more about their guides or who their guide is. Some people know very much their guides, some people do not. So one part is their spiritual journey, and they want to learn more about their soul, because we have our soul, and our soul is something that continues, but the soul has connections to other lives, to other elements, you see. So there's part of the soul journey that continues within who we are. So that's one part of a reading that certain people come for. But the other part is where people are lost. People they don't know what to do in life. It's not a good place to be, and it can be a very delicate place. And so one part is where, it's where someone needs direction. They need an element of help, or the positive energy placed back into them. for them to take away in order to create changes within their own life. Because at the end of the day, we can wait for life to change, or we can start that change ourselves. So I go to, not to me, but to them. I go right here to them with the reading, and try to get that center back in place for them to work with. So they can take that piece away and work with that. But, you know, when we're dealing with life can be, the challenge can be what I call the sprint. So we quickly get through it, and we're exhausted, but we've done it. But sometimes those challenges are a marathon, and we really have to pace our energy within the marathon of life. So it's a different way in which we have to work, and we have to get the mind, because the mind has two elements, it's the conscious and the subconscious. And we have to be careful what we feed our subconscious mind with, because if we feed it the wrong information, it thinks we want it, but we don't want it. We want bliss, we want happiness, but we're not feeding the subconscious with bliss and happiness. We're feeding it constantly with the challenges. So we have to get our head in a certain place. But I'm not saying it's easy, but the reading carries all these aspects.
That's wonderful. And you in yourself as well hold this beautiful wisdom through your own experience. So because you've gone through these seemingly dramatic experiences of having to let go of everything and rebuild anew again, we all hold that. That's a big fear for many of us.
Absolutely.
And the letting go of things that we have become really accustomed to. And so, you know, the moving into the unknown is scary for many, until we actually realize it's like you've mentioned before, it's just a doorway into a new.
It is, and that's such a great doorway. I see it as doorways or stepping stones. And the thing is that to create change, we need to make more decisions. And it's very easy to make a decision when life is very blissful, and when it's like the securities of life is there. It's very easy to make decisions, and crazy decisions, when life is secure. But my goodness me, the challenge comes when we have to make decisions when life is challenging, when life is dark and difficult. But the importance of those challenges are very, very important, because they create the change. You know, as I said, we can wait for life, but we could be waiting a long time for life to bring those changes. And the other thing is, we have our coping strategy. When our energy dips, our coping strategy is to do this. This is our cope, because what I'm doing now is holding my energy. I'm holding myself together now, you see. And this is a very human thing to do, because if I don't hold myself together, Patrick, I'm going to fall apart. And I can't fall apart yet, because I have to get through this. So, but this actually, it benefits us, or it gives us, it aids us. This is self-love. This is self-love. This is self-nurturing. And but the thing is, it's a bit like a house. What this does is it closes all my windows and doors down. It draws all the curtains. It draws all the curtains and brings those elements into play, and works in that way. But the actual thing, and what we've got to do is we've got to do this, and we've got to bring that element into play. But this is a scary thing to do. It's very scary at the same time in order to do this. But it's very important. So we have to get people to think differently, or be in a place where they feel brave in undertaking that element, because this is the difference between this and that is massive.
Yes.
It's huge.
Yes.
And it's also the law of attraction.
I remember when I came to you with some friends, I was in my early 20s, and I came for a spirit guide reading and portrait. And it was a really wonderful experience for me on many levels. And it kept unfolding after the experience, because I was so young, and at the beginning of, like you were mentioning before, how you wanted to sort of immerse yourself in other things to start to learn, and to really sort of remembering what we already know, but gaining that inner confidence again and trust in listening to our own inner voice. But I didn't have that then. And you created this beautiful portrait for me of Athena, the goddess Athena. And you were mentioning things like that she was calling for me to stand in my power a bit more and to reveal myself a little bit more. And at the time, I remember having this resistance to what she was saying, because it was calling for a part of me that was hidden at the time to reveal more. And I was living a dual life in a way. I was presenting myself as this person who's in this job, working, doing whatever. But there was this other aspect of me that wanted to come through too. And so it was confirmation that I knew that something new was birthing, but I was still afraid of that aspect, and to be seen and all those things that we go through, especially in the beginning. Being seen is one of the most scary doorways we have to go through, where we are labeled as weird or strange or different. Absolutely. You know. So it took time for me to understand the wisdom that you were bringing through at the time. But then as I evolved, I was able to, because it was very on point. And you shared it in such a nurturing way as well, which was really lovely. So I will always remember that experience for me, because it was sort of shining a light on how scared and contracted, afraid I was of revealing myself, to really move into who I truly am. And so, so it's sort of just strengthening what you were saying about these readings as well. Tell me about how do these visions come through to you? Do they come in your dream state? Do you sort of meditate, or do you when you paint, does it just come through?
It's a combination of all those things, really. It can be a dream. I mean, I have such powerful dreams that sometimes if I have to go to work the next day, then I try to hold on to it. And there are times I can wake up in the morning and start the painting, and try to get an essence of it down onto the canvas, because it's like you're tying it. If I can actually start it on a canvas, is actually I've tied it to the canvas, so it can't fade away. It's there. I've got so much of it down that it kind of anchors the image, and the chances of losing that image is remote. But there are times when I can't, so I have to try to and hold on to it. So some of them do fade away, and because I just cannot get life, I have to get on with other things. But I've also been at work where I've seen an image, something fleeted through. It can be a very physical thing. So I can get a glimpse of something. That's what I call a physical part. It could be a thought. A thought could be very, very strong. So it's a combination from dreams to seeing to thought to feeling. They're generally one of those. And so sometimes I just have to work with a feeling. And I may just buy a canvas. I may have a canvas in there. I try to keep a variety of blank canvases, different size. And I'll take a canvas that I feel is right. And I may just lay it on the ground in my kitchen, just put it on my kitchen floor. And I'll actually just pour paint on it, and then move it around, and then pick it up and put it onto the easel, and then start to work with it. So there is part of the creative energy that I've come to learn is, there is no limit to the creative source. And that's what I like to teach in the workshops, because everyone is creative. Everyone has a creative energy. Creative energy the essence of it is a doer. It's what I call it's a doer. It's an action. Creative energy is an action. It doesn't talk about it. We can call that to be inspired, but creative energy is an action. And that's what I teach in the workshops. We want action. We're bringing something about. Doesn't matter, whether it's singing, writing, music, or that. But it's an action. And the only thing that can create a block. Well, there's a few things that create blocks. So it could go back to someone's childhood in school, where a teacher said, you'll never be no good, or it can even come from a parent actually to a child that says, that is wrong, you're doing that wrong, that is not right, you'll never be good at that. When we get into the creative energies and workshops, it's quite an emotional place to get involved in. Actually, it's we like to run it with laughter, because I also know there's the other stuff that's going to come up within it, and just self-doubt of who we are, and it does go back to somewhere in our past of someone saying we're a failure, we failed with that. So there's a lot going on within the art workshop as well, but everyone has the creative source. But for me, I've come to learn that everyone, and I do tell everyone as well in the workshop, that everything they experience, I still do. I have, and I still experience that. I still experience doubt. I still experience the challenge. I still experience that, all those things I still experience, because we're all the same. I am no different. And I work with the same materials, the same board. And, but it's about when we start to see, paint is a wonderful therapy, because it teaches us to overcome. And through even painting, creating has helped me deal with life. I can say, oh, I'm going to throw that away. It's no good. I can't, I'm no good. Because that's how we deal with life as well. We deal with life like that. So, but I've come to learn that I need to overcome it, need to keep going, because it will come right. So within those elements of the workshop, I'm teaching them not my experience of what I've learned over these years working with the creative energy. So we take it from any form, any feeling, thought, element. One of the hardest things for people to do is to hold on to a vision, to own a vision. But some visions are not meant to be held on to. They are a journey. So we have the vision, which is solid. So if we take it like a painting, there it is. There it is. I can see it, all the vision, and I'm going to put it all here. So it's a solid vision. But there are visions that start and then they move. And we have to learn to move with them. So we go with the flow. So it's like life. It's everything. It's so much of it that's like life out there. So we have to go with those flows, because they are a vision, but they are a journey. And it's like reading a book. It takes us through stages. So there are those solid ones which carry that. It's like a rock or a stone, but there's those that are like a book, and it moves. And we have to try to have the freedom to work with that movement, as well as the consistency to work with the rock, because some people will struggle holding themselves in one space. They want to, no, I want to go there now, I want to do that, I want to do this and do. So there's those that are all over the place that need to be focused on this one space, and there's those that are in this one that need to be more freedom, because with creativity comes freedom to express. And I very often say to people that, when we're working on whether it's a blank piece of paper or whether it's a canvas, I'm also that blank piece of paper or that canvas. And if that picture if it's not in your feeling that it's right, then change it. But if my life is not right, change this. So we are like the canvas ourselves. So I've come to learn to work with me as a picture. And there has been times in my life where I've overpainted me. I've actually overpainted me and presented myself as a completely different person. But it's part of me. It's part of that growth. So there's so much that's going on within all these elements. And there's so much that I've been taught just through creativity. And also creativity, you know, I hear artists say about the boundaries or the restrictions, or the technical side, but I don't do any of that. Because to me, the creative source is everything. And even within a painting, even if I put oil and water together, and because they don't gel, they fight each other, but they are creating. They are creating their differences within the picture. And it's not wrong. It can create such beautiful effect. So someone said to me, how did you do that? I said, well, the textbook says I can't. They said, oh, it's beautiful. I said, I know it is, but they say I can't do that. So it's about, we all have our own rules that are inside of our, because we have something called mindset.
Yes.
And mindset is a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong, it's a powerful thing, but is it working? So it's when it's not working, we need to step outside our own mindset. We need to step outside the box of our mind to create a difference, because actually it isn't working. You told me your life is not working, but you're holding on to the same set patterns. How can you create change by working in exactly the same way? You cannot. You need to, well, I always say the expression, you need to stop doing what you do and do what you don't, because it gets the mind really thinking. And but it all comes from creating. I mean, I've just learned so much through painting and breaking boundaries and rules, but it all reflects back into the personal boundaries that have restricted me, as well as they restrict the painting. So, oh yeah, there's so much.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. And it's brought there's such a freedom as well in just being able to express, and because we hold so much judgment, just to be able to express. And for people who say, oh, I'm not artistic, I always think, well, we are, because we are all artists. We are creating our lives the way that we want to. And so, you know, it's just an innate part of all of us and what we are here to do. So I love that. Are there any visions that have stayed with you or have been so profound?
I guess in a way, there's been a few, they've all played their part. It's very difficult picking, say, a painting. I mean, I've had experiences that have kind of like, wow, your mind just cannot, because your logical mind tries to reason with the experience, and it goes, to the logical mind, it's impossible. But, you know, to the powers of, it's not. So it's the difference between the conscious and the subconscious, you know, our logical mind and our intuitive mind. So yeah, I've had experiences that have blown me away. And there's not many, but there has been experiences along the way. And I've been fortunate enough to sit in a psychic circle. I was invited as a guest to sit within a physical circle. And I haven't got words for it. And in your logical mind, a physical circle is where, I mean, there was a medium that who channels in, and the physical elements that happen within things moving around. And your mind goes through a series of thinking, gosh, could that be done in a way that is not real? Could that be done in a way that is trickery? Could that, I can't figure it out. I'd have to say no. I have to say, no, I don't know. It's poof. And I had messages about my mum, because she was very ill at the time. And they said, your mum will be fine. She will pull through this. And all that I was told from a spirit was very true. Everything that I was told was true. And even though my mum has passed on now, that's a number of years ago, I went into that physical circle. And but it was true. And I was well, that amazing experience. And I've had experience of my own self with the energy ball and the bird flying around. And my spirit guide that came that time. There's no words for that experience. And that's where guides, see, we have the two elements. We have family, to paint family. And there was a time when confirmation actually was painting a loved one in spirit. That was confirmation. Guides were not, my experience or my entry into spiritualism was through a guide. It wasn't through a family member. And so I only painted guides in my early days. But I guess as out there in that world, between different spiritual organizations, proof of life after death was a family member and not a spirit guide. But because I had encountered these experiences and I started to paint through a spirit guide, I never painted in my life. I never really went to school in my life. I had some schooling, but very little. I've used my hands. I've used common sense. I have a logical mind. And that's what's got me through. And I'm not afraid to graft. I'm not afraid to work. It's all I've known. And but a spirit guide came into my life and I started painting these pictures. And so that is my experience. And so there was quite a period of time in the early days of family, painting family. But spirit guides are amazing energies, and they're linked more to the soul than the physical, because obviously a family member is a physical connection. But also a family member is a lot of emotion connection. And there's also a lot of healing connection on a worldly level, because painting some families can be the most beautiful thing ever, but painting another family member is the worst thing you could ever do. So it's kind of like, oh my God, even though I've come to learn it's all healing, my goodness me, it's for me sat this side of the table painting the wrong family member. But it's all to do with healing and the element of them letting go and moving on for forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about the person that's committed it. Forgiveness is about us allowing ourselves to move forwards. It's otherwise we carry all this horrible stuff inside of us for a long, long time, and it's not healthy. It's not good. So forgiveness allows us to move to let go, because to start living our life again, and it's not to do with them. It's a release of ourselves, forgiveness. And so it takes a while to get it all across. But for my guides are linked to the soul, and it's a very powerful connection. The soul sits within us, and it continues. It's there throughout the physical journey. It's the essence of who we are. So guides are the essence of ourselves, or a connection to the essence. That is, so it's a far different energy than a family energy. But I also understand the values of family energies as well. It's just different. But yeah, so it's kind of all these things that take place. So I guess, I even all these years later, I still kind of because I do disconnect from my paintings to a degree as well. I paint them. It's like a teacher with a blackboard. You do the lesson, but then he rubs it all off. And he's got to clean, his board is all ready for the next. So for me, it's for the next painting. So I kind of do this, even though I have the physical picture, it enables me to move forwards. But the faith, I have a faith picture, which was, I had a vision of Christ on the cross, and I was an atheist. So in my early days, I had this image of Christ on the cross, and they were asking me to paint. And I thought, I don't know where to start with this. It's not me. I don't get into religion. It didn't go away. It didn't go away. And I undertook to paint Jesus on the cross. But it was shown to me that Jesus, it showed me a difference outside of the churches. It showed me that he was a wizard, a magician, a healer. He was a wise man. He was all these things, far greater than how he was not there for control in no shameful manner. He was a person that came from there's been many wise men that walked this earth, and women, but he was, that's what he was. But it's how the element of, to some extent, being used within a form to an extent of control, which I rebelled against. That's for me. So it was a personal teaching for me, but I saw him as, I saw it as so different, a different light, completely different light. Again, you know, I could compare him even to Merlin to Jesus, and Buddha to Jesus. And there's so many, he's in that category of other wise men that have been here. So it changed my perspective of Christ energy in that way. So that was a very challenging picture. I painted another picture, which was almost like a Mohican Indian, Native American, but he was just wrapped in a blanket of color. And when I say blanket of color, it was a blanket of energy. It's just, you couldn't see his arms, but you could see the shape of his arms through the energy blanket. And it was just his face, his head. It's like a massive big blanket. It almost, in a way, it wasn't like a massive big buffalo skin, but it was a massive big energy blanket, and he was wrapped around it. And it was a big painting. It was like 6 foot high, and because it was basically energy, that one sticks with me a lot. So, and it's called Creation. That is the painting of creation. So there's two funny ones, because one of them is faith, Jesus, and the other one is an Indian, which is creation. So it's quite strange. Now I've just kind of clicked on, there's some connection even, but it's, yeah. So that's the picture of creation was one that always does something for me. But there's been many. They're like all pieces that make up the wholeness, if that makes sense.
And to close, what brings you the greatest joy today in the way that you work?
I think, in a way, I think one of the greatest things that have kind of, because I find the work very challenging. Personally, I do find it quite challenging, because I also have to come out of a comfort zone of just Patrick. Because just Patrick literally is just me. I mean, if someone says, what do you do? I'm still inclined to say, I'm a builder. That's what I do. Because it gives me, I have more kind of structure in my head to what a builder is, to what a builder does, to what the other. So I'm a builder, but I do paint. I'm inclined still to say that. But I guess it takes me outside my comfort zone. It takes me, I find that life is here to live. Life is here to live. Life is here to experience. So what I'm doing is I'm experiencing spirit. And even though I don't understand it all, I'm experiencing it. But the flip side to that is I'm experiencing me through spirit. So that's, I find spiritualism is very much about finding oneself, because that's already there. You see, that it's about us finding. It's changed my life. I don't struggle with me. I don't have no inner battle with me. I accept me for what this body has carried me this far in life. I value it regardless of. So it's spiritualism is a very individual, empowering thing to do. It helps us find ourselves, our way. So yeah, it's discovery, I guess, in a way, part of the discovery of the pathway. And I know that is, part of it is just this life is one part of that. But I want to take myself out of that comfort zone. I want to explore creativity. I want to, because it goes back to the creative source again. Yeah. Whether it's creative source as in that, or whether it's creative source here, or whether it's creative source here, it's the creative source that I find wow. It's just wow. It's just wow factor. There is no other. It's huge. It's massive. It's wonderful. But but the other thing is that it helps me also to use my senses. I have to be more Observation is also a big part of what I do, learning to observe. I have to observe a painting. I have to take my thoughts and observe them. I have to look at a painting and observe it. I have to observe me and my actions within the world. And if my actions are creating certain effects, I move me around within the world in order to guide my ship into more calmer waters. Or so it's being an observer of my own life as well. Because a lot of it before, I didn't do any of this. I just barged through life, and survived life, and just kept going. But now I observe. I live my life differently now because I believe in karma. I believe that, you know, I have to be aware of my actions, and so I have to keep my actions pure, strong. My actions can still be strong, but they come from the right place. They come from the right place now, and we have to be strong in this world, because the world's a very beautiful place, but it's a very challenging place as well at the same time. So it's huge. God, that question. I think I'd have to say creation is to create and to work with creation. It's the source, you know, and whether we take the source as the universe, because it's massive. Because, you know, there's a universe out there, but there's a universe in each and every one of us. So it's huge in here, and it's huge. So creation, I think I'd say I'm tapping into creation, whatever that means. But almost, it's like a bag of sweets. You know, it's like a bag of sweets. Color is like a bag of sweets. Yeah.
Patrick, you've been an absolute joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.